Hello and welcome to the Story Shed. Hope that you're all keeping well. Again, it's a bit rainy outside, but it's nice and warm in here. So we'll have a story. Sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the story of the Wild Swans. There was once a king who had 11 handsome sons and a beautiful daughter called Ellie. Ellie and her brothers couldn't have been happier. Their father loved them dearly and gave them everything they wished for. Then one day, everything changed. The king took a new wife who was wicked and jealous. She was so jealous that she sent Ellie to live far away and turned the 11 princes into wild swans and banished them from the kingdom. The years passed, and the king sent his wife to bring Ellie home. The queen was furious when she saw the princess, for she'd grown into a beautiful woman. The wicked queen was determined that the king would not see Ellie's beauty, so she rubbed dirt all over her face and into her hair. When the king was presented with this ragamuffin, he could not believe that it was his beautiful daughter. Poor Ellie was thrown from the palace, and the wicked queen cackled with glee. Ellie wandered day after day in search of her 11 brothers. The first person she saw was an old woman collecting wood in the forest. "Have you seen 11 princes?" Ellie asked. "No, my pretty," replied the old woman, "but I did see 11 wild swans wearing golden crowns flying overhead." Ellie continued her search. One day she came to a beach where she found 11 golden feathers. Surely this must be a sign, she thought, remembering the old woman's words. She decided to wait to see what happened. Ellie lay down on a bed of sand until the sun began to set, and she heard the flap of giant wings, and then suddenly 11 white swans landed on the seashore beside her. Ellie barely had time to admire their beauty before the sun sank below the horizon, and the 11 swans were replaced by 11 handsome princes. Ellie and her 11 brothers were overjoyed to be together once again, and quickly the brothers described what the wicked queen had done to them. Ellie listened to her brother's tale, and they were doomed to take the form of swans while the sun was up. But as soon as the sun set, they became princes once more. This meant that every sunset they must be on land, otherwise they would fall from the sky and surely die. Not only had the wicked queen done this, but she'd also banished them to an island far across the great sea. They were only allowed to return to their own kingdom for 11 days every year. The journey they had to make to and from the island was long and dangerous. There was only one tiny island to stop at along the way, so the princes had to make sure they reached this place before sunset. Otherwise, they would return to their human forms and drop from the sky and drown. The 11 swan princes were due to return to their island in the sea the very next day. Ellie begged to go with them, so they stayed up all night, weaving a mat on which to carry her. The following morning, as the sun rose, the 11 swan princes took off, carrying Ellie between them. The swans flew as fast as they could, but because they were carrying Ellie, they flew slower than normal. As the sun began to slip beneath the horizon, Ellie peered at the sea and tried not to panic. If they did not reach the tiny island before the sun disappeared, the princes would return to their human form and they would all fall into the angry sea below. Suddenly, Ellie spotted a tiny dot below. As the swans circled down the spot, grew larger and larger until an island appeared. Just as the sun disappeared, the 11 swans vanished, and 11 princes and Ellie thumped to the ground. They had made it only just in time. The following morning they continued their journey. At the end of a long day's flying, they reached their island home. Ellie was delighted with the cave they'd lived in. She spent each day alone, and each evening was joined by her 11 brothers. However, she wasn't happy. For how could she be when her brothers were doomed to spend their days as swans? Then, one night, Ellie had a dream in which a fairy appeared. She told Ellie that if she made 11 shirts out of stinging nettles and threw them over the 11 wild swans, the spell would be broken. But she added, Ellie must not utter a single word until the task was finished. The following morning, Ellie set to work, and by the time her brothers returned at sunset, she had finished 1 shirt. But her brothers were worried. Ellie's hands were raw from where the stinging nettles had stung her, but she refused to tell them what she was doing. Day after day, Ellie worked on the shirts until there was only 1 still left to make. She was picking the nettles for the final shirt when a trumpet sounded and a king rode by. "What are you doing?" he asked, but Ellie could not reply. When the king stared into Ellie's sad eyes, he knew that he wanted her for his bride. Thinking he was rescuing her, the king carried Ellie off to his palace. His servants followed behind, carrying Ellie's belongings, including the nettles and shirts. At the palace, the king put Ellie's things in a tower and gave her a key so that she could go there at any time. Shortly after, the king married Ellie and made her his queen. Ellie began to enjoy her new life, but she was still determined to finish the shirts and break the spell over her brothers. And early one morning she slipped out of the palace and crept to the tower. Not realizing that her husband was following her, she found the nettles and began making the final shirt. The king, who was hiding in the shadows, was furious. He was sure that his wife was a witch. He was about to jump out and accuse her when he heard the flap of giant wings, and 11 wild swans flew through the window. He watched in amazement as Ellie finished her work and threw a shirt over each of the swans. Then he let out a gasp as the swans vanished and were replaced by 11 princes. The spell was broken. "What's all this?" cried the king, stepping out of the shadows. I can explain," said Ellie, and once she started talking, there was no stopping her. Without pausing for breath, she told the king all about the spell her wicked stepmother had cast on her brothers, and how she'd been making nettle shirts to break it. The king was delighted that Ellie had broken the spell over her brothers. "You must all live with us in the palace," he told the 11 princes. And so they did, until one by one they each found a bride of their own. And that is the end of the story of the Wild Swans. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, then let us know at thestoryshed@gmail.com. That's thestoryshed@gmail.com. And thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel and share the stories. And in the meantime, take care, be well, and bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.